have to do our 30-second commercial.
You are a worthless piece of garbage. You don't even deserve to be here with these nice people. I just can't even look at you, and now you can't even kill yourself correctly. Why are you here? I was in a place where I had two choices. I could either continue living the way I was, in which case I was going to die, or I could fight. And I chose to fight for my life. And I checked myself into rehab. But seriously, who was I kidding? I'm a worthless piece of garbage. I'm here with all of these nice people, doctors, lawyers, bankers, housewives. I'm homeless, addicted, abused, property of a motorcycle gang. It took about 2 weeks for me to figure out this really wasn't going to work. So I started to plan my escape. And then something happened and completely changed my life. So I just settled into my decision to escape from rehab, and something happened. I won a book. Now, I know that's not a big deal. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but worthless, lowlife, good for nothing. I'd never won anything in my life, and I won a book. I stood in my room that night in rehab, clutching that book to my chest, looking at the ceiling. You're not going to let me leave, even if I want to, are you? And the voice came back, and it said, no, Sue, we're not. In that moment, my life changed. In that moment, I changed, and I've never gone back. Isn't it time you let yourself free from your invisible prison? To find out more, you can go to www.escapeyourinvisibleprison.com.
So I showed you that video, the best way I know to capture my history in a nutshell was to show you that 90-second video, and that was me. Worthless, didn't feel I belonged on the planet, was absolutely convinced there was something fundamentally wrong with me and that I shouldn't be here, to the point where I actively spent 2 years trying to kill myself. Clearly it didn't work, but I remember once taking a handful of Valium and drinking the better part of 12 cans of beer, and I woke up the next morning. Now, I was slow for a few days after that, but I woke up, and I couldn't understand why. That I spent 20 years living on the street, addicted, abused, as it said in the video, couldn't figure out why I was here. I hated myself so much. And it came to the point where I had to make a choice. I was either going to die, which I was okay with, because, you know, that's where everybody expected me to end up anyway, dead in a gutter, or I was going to try and fight. And it was at the place where I knew if I continued the way I was going to die, but I was pretty sure if I tried to change, I might also die. So I don't know how many of you understand this, but I was looking at a vast unknown. Does that make sense? So I knew I needed to change. Okay, I knew I couldn't continue the way I was, but I had absolutely no idea of what or how or what would be waiting for me, or if people would even talk to me. You know, if I would even be able to get a job, if anybody would even like me. And it was the most terrifying thing ever. I chose to fight because I figured I had nothing to lose. So I chose to fight anyway. But I tell you, I spent a long time like this. Does anybody understand this picture? Yeah, look at the heads. Okay. So you know exactly what I mean. On the left-hand side was what I showed to the world. Yeah? And on the right-hand side was how I actually felt inside. And this, to me, represents that invisible prison, that we're stuck in this invisible prison, unfortunately, of our own making. So this actually was me. This is a real picture of me. I think I was probably 24 or 25 years old. I probably weighed maybe 40 kilos, maybe 41 kilos, and I was holding a pair of earrings that cost 50 pence, and it was my prized possession. And that was me when I started this journey. Thankfully, this is me now. The book is story of my life, of the left-hand side of that. But what I'm here to talk to you about today is escaping your invisible prison. The only reason I show you the video or I tell you that story about me is because what I understand is that when you look at me today, sometimes it's hard to put this me together with that me. Okay, it's hard to see those two. So I show you the video and I tell you the story because I want you to know that I'm not standing here talking about escape your invisible prison, 3 secrets to set yourself free, because I went and studied that. You know, I read 12 books. I wish I could say that to you. The truth of the matter is, I write this because this is what I know. For everything else that I do in my career, traveling around the world with companies, this is what I'm an expert at. I'm an expert at how we keep ourselves locked in an invisible prison of our own making and how we can set ourselves free. Why? Because I spent the first 31 years of my life locked in an invisible prison that I created, and I've spent the last 26 setting myself free. And what I realized, and it took me a while, was that there is everything that you could possibly want is out there waiting for you, but you have to go and get it. Now, if you had told me 26 years ago that that was the case, I would have thought you were high on drugs, okay? Because I hated myself. I couldn't see anything past this. I never, ever would have imagined in a million years that I would be, well, standing here in front of all of you, writing books and doing workshops. So hopefully, if nothing else, you can look at me and say, well, she did it, so I can. Because you know what? You can. All you have to do is look in the mirror. Whatever's wrong with your life right now, I promise you can fix it. It's nobody else's fault. We make choices, we get here, and we're the ones that can set ourselves free. So, a lot of you have read my book, but the book is Escape Your Invisible Prison, 9 Secrets to Setting Yourself Free. Now, 45 minutes, I cannot do a good job on 9 secrets unless I speed talk, and no one wants that. But I can do a pretty good job of telling you the foundational secret. So the most important one, big chapter in the book about in how to begin to set yourself free. So I'm going to start there. And then I'm going to touch on a couple of other secrets. And if you're interested in more or you think this is for me, then come and see me right outside the door and I'm happy to talk to you. Number 1 secret for escaping your invisible prison, and like I said, this comes from experience, is you need to learn to love and respect yourself, all right? Now, there's a big problem with this. So, here's the deal. If I could share this information with everyone in the world, I literally would. And I told my publisher, no, we're selling a copy of the book to everybody in the world. Because I really think if we understood this, if they taught this in school, we'd be a whole lot better off as society, and we'd certainly have a lot less in conflict. So this is, I think, the most important thing that I can share with you. The problem, and where this all starts, okay, this invisible prison, is that there are only 2 things that occupy our minds as adults 24 hours a day. Just 2. Now, I'm going to count on the gentleman in the room to guess the first one. And there's a guy sitting right there looking at me going, with this little grin, you got it, that's the first one, yeah. But it's, you know, procreation, it's furthering the species. The second one is actually ourselves. So I want you to think about this. Every thought that goes through your head has something to do with you. Think about it. I want to go to this talk. Oh, well, maybe I shouldn't go. Oh, I'll sit in the back. So that way, if I want to leave, you know, nobody will notice me leave and I'll be able to sneak out. Oh, I should have eaten before I got here. I'm actually a little hungry. Did I see food over there? Darn, I need to go to the toilet, but I don't want to leave now. Oh, I wish my friend was here. Wait, I think she's speaking tomorrow. Yeah? I don't read minds, I just know human beings. We are the universe. Every thought that goes through your head has something to do with you. How many of you remember your dreams? When was the last time you had a dream and you weren't in it? I know, right? Okay, you might not have been the action figure, but you were present and you were watching the action. 24 hours a day, the world revolves around us. So now, please don't mistake this for me saying, oh, that's really bad, we have to stop that. You can't, okay, you can't. It's neuroscience. It's how we're wired. If anyone has young children under the age of about 6 or 7, you see this operating in your children, don't you? That they really believe the entire world is focused around them. No, you see it in children. And this is why I'm sharing this with you. It's not bad, good, or anything else. It simply is how the brain is wired. Now, hopefully, and I say hopefully, because I'm sure you know some people for whom this never occurred, but hopefully around the age of 7, we start to learn what we call separation. And we realize that we are not the center of the universe, that there are other people in the universe. But there's a problem with this. Okay, there's a problem with this. Because when we're born, from the time that you're born, and I only have 45 minutes, so I can't go into great detail with this, but I did write about it in the book. There's a long chapter, because this to me is so important in both why we end up in the invisible prison, but also the starting point for setting ourselves free. So without going into all the science of this, what happens from the time that we're born is that we have what we call filters, okay? Psychologists call them filters. So basically, everything that happens to you starts to shape these filters. Who are you? How old are you? Who were your parents? Do you have brothers and sisters? Are you the oldest, the middle, the youngest child? Did you have your own bedroom? Did you have to share a bedroom? Where did you go to school? Everything that happens to you shapes these filters, okay? Unfortunately, and I'm going to say this really slowly because I really want you to understand this, it's the foundation of the invisible prison. Anything anyone has ever said to you or done to you shapes these filters. Now, these filters have a legitimate purpose, and I always think about them like a car air filter, okay? So there's millions of pieces of stimuli being bombarded us every day. Your brain literally cannot take it all in and process it. So it catches the information that supports your beliefs and values, that subconsciously helps you to be successful, that keeps you safe, that you're interested in, that you want to pay attention to. Have you ever noticed that you're walking somewhere and you hear people talking, you can't hear what they're saying, but they say your name, and you hear them, don't you? Okay, this is filters in action. So I want you to think about what I just said. When we're born, we start to, everything that happens to you, who you are, your parents, your friends, your family, your school, shapes these filters. And the stimuli that comes to you is caught by these filters. So, best example I can think of, how many of you have brothers and sisters and you look at them today and you go, are you sure we're related? Because they're just so different than you? Okay, so if people raised in the same house as you can view the world in such a different way, what does this say about the people we come in contact with, okay? So we are the center of our own universe. And because of these filters, we have our own unique way of viewing the world. This brings with it another problem. The other problem is that the logical, conscious part of your brain, the neocortex, you know, the part we worship, right? Language skills, decision making, rational thought, right? Logic, that neocortex, the biggest part of your brain that we worship, doesn't start to develop until you're about 6 years old. Doesn't finish developing until you're in your late teens if you're female, until you're in your late 20s if you're male. All the women are laughing. They get their brains eventually. It just takes a while, okay? I have 2 30-some-odd-year-old sons. It just took them a while, to get it. But I'm laughing, but I'm not kidding. I'm sharing with you this because this is how we end up locked in these invisible prisons. And I really want you to know this, because I don't think I'm special. I'm not rich. I'm not famous. I did not have the support of my family, by the way. My family, who loves me to death, did not want me to go to rehab and get healed because they loved me so much. They were afraid. So I didn't have any help. I did this by myself with no therapy. That's the reason I'm telling you this. I want you to know that there's nothing special required to start to release yourself except understanding where the prison comes from, first of all. So we have our unique way of viewing the world. Unfortunately, our logical, rational brain doesn't start to form till we're about 6 years old. It starts to develop. Except the filters are forming from the time we're born. Can you see the problem here? Yeah. The problem is that your limbic system, the one that's in control, okay, the limbic system in your brain, which is the one in control, memory, emotion, it's in control. It's being programmed by people outside of you. You're getting these messages when you grow up. You're getting these messages from family, from friends, from the media these days, and they're imprinting, they're sticking. But your logical brain doesn't know enough to argue with them because it hasn't formed yet. And it's these messages that will often guide our lives and keep us stuck. Is this making sense at this point? Okay, because of course, I have a million stories to support this. This is Abraham Maslow. Even in the 50s, Abraham Maslow knew this, that every thought, everyone without exception, records itself on our unconscious and makes us either despise or love ourselves more. So what does this mean? Really simply, here's a goofy story. Don't let the accent fool you. I am not American. Okay, so we'll just get that out of the way first. Okay, no idea what's going on over there. I'm not American. Anybody from Nottingham or the Midlands? Woohoo! All right. Born and raised in Keyworth. Yep. Born and raised in Nottingham. It sounds like it, doesn't it? I can still speak Nottinghamshire. Are you ready? Yeah? Are you mashed, me duck? Right? Okay. I live there now. I came back about 5 years ago. The accent is obviously in trying to get away from myself, trying to get away from that self-destruct. I moved to America. I moved to Canada, trying to get away from myself, only to realize that the problem wasn't outside of me, the problem actually was me. So that's where the accent comes from, so make no mistake. So, being born and raised in the UK, they have recently passed a law that you are not allowed to do this anymore. So I'm going to assume it was not just me that grew up like this. My mother's way of controlling my sister and I, my mother would say, if you don't eat all your dinner, the policeman is going to come and arrest you. She'd say, if you don't sit up straight, the policeman is going to come and take you away. She'd say, and this was always very funny, if you don't put your hair behind your ears when you're eating, the policeman is going to come and take you away. So basically, right, from the time I can remember, I had been told that the man in the blue uniform is going to come and take me away if I don't behave. I grew up with an incredibly irrational fear of men in blue uniforms. Now, I was not aware of this. I'd be driving down the road, and I would see a police car, and immediately I would start to shake, not little, visibly. And my hands would be exactly at 10 and 2, right? Exactly at 10 and 2. And I'd be doing exactly 30 miles an hour, not 29, not 31. And I'd be looking in all the mirrors to see where the police car was, convinced they were coming to arrest me. For what, I have no idea. But you get my point? This was programmed into me before I knew that the policeman wasn't going to arrest me for eating my dinner. I didn't know that when I was 2 or 3. It was this deep belief. And I remember the day, and she's standing right there, she'll support me on this. The day I recognized the power of this and keeping myself locked in this prison, I was actually driving to my friend Cynthia's house, and I went through an amber light. And I saw this flashing siren behind me. And I pulled over the side of the road, and I scared the police officer. Because he rolled down the window, I'm like, I'm miserable. And I said, are you okay? I'm afraid. And he said, it's okay. I just wanted you to know you went through an amber light. And I'm like, and I drove over to her house, and I'm shaking the entire way, and I get to her door. She's like, oh my God, what's wrong? The police. A completely ridiculous response to a really stupid thing. And that's when I became aware of the power of this. So there's lots that I could tell you, all right? I unraveled this. These imprints, these messages, these unwritten rules, these thought processes that guide our lives that we've never stopped to think, is that even rational? So part of my problem, and thankfully I've given this up, so if you're seeing tissues hanging out of my dress, you just blame my Nana and the fact that I gave up on the perfectionist thing a long time ago. Because I was raised to believe that if you want people to like you, you have to be perfect. I want you to think about that for a minute. Yeah. As a child, it didn't take very long for me to realize I was never going to be perfect enough. And that's what drove me out on the street. So when it came to my trying to figure out this invisible prison, one of the first things that I was able to realize was, in fact, that it wasn't me that was wrong, it was my thinking that was wrong. Does this make sense? That there were all these ridiculous beliefs that I had and thought processes that I had, like the police were going to come and arrest me if I was doing 29 miles an hour instead of 30, right? That if I didn't look exactly perfect and speak the right way and say exactly the right thing at exactly the right moment, that I wouldn't have friends, that nobody would want to see me. I even recall I had a job in a ladies' clothing store. So the most difficult thing that I had to do was fold jumpers and put them on a shelf. It was really hard, very technical. Even had a guide, piece of paper. And every day I would go home and I would call her. And she'd say, how was your day? And I'd say, I'm pretty sure today's the day I'm going to get fired. Right? Every day. Because, and I want you to really think about this. In my mind, in order for me to keep my job, I had to be perfect. But when I was going about my day, remember what I said about filters, we catch the information that supports what we believe. We catch the information that supports our value systems. I could see all of the things that I didn't do well. So in my mind, I would go home with a laundry list of things that I had done wrong that day. And I was convinced that I was going to get fired. What I didn't know was that that only resided in my mind. And so why this is so important? Because there are all kinds of things that we believe about ourselves. And like I said, I wish I was telling you stories about other people, and I could certainly tell you thousands of stories of other people. But this is something I know intimately. We believe we don't belong. We don't fit in. We believe we're not good enough or worthy enough. We believe, as I did, I'm a bad person. There's something wrong with me. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not smart enough. This is as far as I can go in life. This is all I can ever do. I'm just a mother. Oh, please give me a break. I'm just a mother. This is all there is in life. I don't deserve anything better than this. I don't deserve a promotion. I don't deserve to be happy or loved. People like me, people like us, don't go on to own their own companies. We don't write books. We don't own businesses. We don't get promotions. People like me don't do whatever it is you tell yourself you can't do. I can't. And my personal favorite, I love this one. That's the way I am. I can't help it. Really? Because if you're not in charge of your brain, then aliens? Right? So it's not my fault. This is what we tell ourselves. And we believe that this is true. Center of the universe, this is the power of it. Because we believe this is true, we automatically assume everyone else believes the same thing. Okay? So I showed you the video. That was actually what I used to tell myself. I'm a lowlife. I'm a loser. Worthless piece of garbage. Nobody is ever going to hire me. Nobody likes me. I'm never going to get any friends. Nothing good is ever going to happen to me. I don't deserve. That's what I told myself, and that's what I believed. So here's the power in this. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. Are we familiar with this concept? Yeah. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. So your beliefs about yourself will drive your expectations. You will always find proof that what you believe is true. I promise you, you will always find proof that what you believe is true, because that's how our brains are wired. Your expectations will then create your behavior, and your behavior will always create the outcome you're expecting, and then we perpetuate the cycle. All right, look at the people in the room going, yeah, you know this is true. So, worthless piece of garbage, good for nothing. No one's ever going to want to listen to me or talk to me. And so I would go to a gathering or go to a job interview or go to work, and I was expecting that everyone else could see that I was a worthless piece of garbage. So I wouldn't talk to anybody. I would stay to myself. I wouldn't have coffee with anyone. I wouldn't communicate. I would stay quiet by myself, terrified that they were going to know I was a worthless piece of garbage and, I don't know what I was afraid of. They would throw rotten fruit at me or something. And then I created exactly the outcome that I expected. No one talked to me. I had no friends, right? Nothing good ever happened to me. So now I'm going to tell you a very funny story about my friend Cynthia and I in this cycle. So we used to try and go out there and meet people, all right? But we had a little bit of an issue about self-worth, okay? About self-worth and, dating in general, and would we ever find love? So we would go to these dances. Ladies will appreciate this. Men, little insight into the female mind, all right? So we'd go to these dances, and we'd think, we're not going to dance. Nobody's going to ask us to dance. We're going to end up sitting there all night like spinsters by ourselves. So wait for it. So we'd go into the dance, we'd find the darkest corner we could, and then we'd sit in the corner, facing the corner, like this, right? And talk to each other and complain that no one was asking us to dance. I mean, come on, seriously. So this is why I'm telling you this. There's power in this center of the universe. I know that the world looks a certain way through your eyes. I know you look a certain way through your eyes. I know, some of you, I can read it on your face. I know what you tell yourself about yourself, okay? I get it. All I'm saying to you is, we can't project that out onto other people and behave as if it's real, as if they see that same thing, because I promise you, they don't. It resides in your head only. You created it. You created that thought. Now, maybe not by yourself, okay? My mother was a perfectionist. She was a people-pleasing perfectionist. I think I probably wasn't even 2 years old when I figured out that nothing I did was going to be good enough for my mother. And if it wasn't going to be good enough for the woman who gave birth to me, then I didn't stand much chance of it being good enough for anybody else. Yeah? I see people nodding, so you know what I mean. What I realized when I started to break down the bars of that invisible prison was that was her issue. Yeah, it had been passed along to me, but I didn't have to continue to live with it. I could recognize it for what it was. My mother's issue. Okay, my mother's issue. And so this is the whole point. You see yourself in a certain way. Probably did not get to that place by yourself, all right? It's likely it was imprinted by other people when you were in school, by family members, by parents, by the media. Those thoughts reside, but they're not necessarily true out there in reality. They're very true in your mind, I get that, but they're not necessarily out there true in reality. And that's what we have to break out of. That's what we have to get rid of, is the garbage in our brain that's saying, you can't do that. Who do you think you are? Well, why can't you do that? Oh my gosh, I told you, I should have been dead in a gutter. I was property of a motorcycle gang, not the nice kind, the FBI most wanted kind. Okay? I've been shot, stabbed, everything else. And yet I'm standing here in front of you. I'm an international speaker. This is what I do for a living. If you had told me back then I would be doing this for a living, I would have thought you were crazy. I didn't even know this was a thing. So whatever it is you believe you can't do, I'm here to tell you, no, that's garbage. That's a load of crap. Yeah, you can. The only thing stopping you is you, and it resides in here. And that's what we need to change. This cycle, okay, this cycle will spiral downwards with our thought processes. But the really cool thing about being human, you can choose your thoughts. You can choose what to think. So we can create a negative self-fulfilling prophecy, or we can create a positive self-fulfilling prophecy. Because I promise you, whatever you believe, whatever you expect, you will create without ever intending to. And that's the power of that. So we have to learn to believe in ourselves. You have to learn to trust who you are, your abilities. Okay, you have to love yourself before anyone else can. You have to trust you. And again, I wish I had like 4 hours and 50 minutes. I don't. I did write about all of this because this was the journey that I had to uncover. I had to break this down in order to get here. I did it, and I know you can. So I did write about all of this in greater detail. We have to give up the idea that there is such a thing as perfect. Okay? There isn't. I think perfect is an okay thing to aspire to. I really do. I still aspire to that. But I don't beat myself up when I don't get there. Because you know what? I hope I never get to perfect. Because if I get to perfect, there's nowhere else for me to go. There's nowhere else for me to go. So I think it's okay to move towards that direction. I've just given up believing that I have to be perfect in order for certain things to occur. I don't. You know what I have to be? Me. That's it. That's what I have to be. And that's where the good stuff starts to happen. We have to believe in ourselves. Okay? Secret number 2. You have to recognize that you're not in this alone. So that video I told you, I showed you, one of the hardest things I have ever had to come to grips with, one of the hardest things that I ever had to grasp was that I actually wasn't in control. So for a control freak, that's not a pleasant thing to accept. But miracles happen in life, and there's been plenty in my life. Things that have happened that I can't explain, like taking a handful of Valium and drinking a copious amount of alcohol and waking up in the morning. I should have been dead. Like standing here today. This should never have happened. I should have been dead years ago. There's so many things in my life that should never have happened. So when I moved back to Nottingham, I found this flat that I really, really loved. It was perfectly me. And the minute I walked in, I thought, this is mine, this is me. And they wouldn't let it to me. I think because of the accent. They didn't believe I was English. Yeah. So we had problems. They wouldn't let it to me, and I had to let it go. So I went back on the road, and I went traveling around the world for a couple of months and doing my thing. And then I went back to Nottingham to continue the search for a flat, because I lived in North Wales for the first few years I was here, and I wanted to move home. And the flat was still on the market. The flat was still on the market. So I called up the estate agent. See, years ago, I would never have dreamed of doing that because she already said no once, and I would have been massively embarrassed and convinced that I was a horrible human being. I didn't get the flat, and it's proof that I'm a horrible human being. You see how this works, right? But I'm a little bit better. So I called her up and I said, I noticed the flat's still on the market. She said, and I'm not kidding, I could tell you a million stories like this. She said, yeah. She said, I'm not sure why. She said, we've had many people look at the flat, and for one reason or another, the deal has fallen through. I said, that's because the flat's supposed to be mine. And she said, I guess it is, and guess where I live? In the flat that was perfectly meant for me. It just took, I have no explanation why those other deals fell through, other than to know there is something at work greater than you. And at some point, okay, and this is the hardest thing, and this is secret number 3. Everything you are afraid of resides in your head. It does not reside out there in reality, okay? We say, well, I can't quit my job. I'll never get another job. And then we proceed as if that's true. How can that be true? Are you a mind reader? Mystic? No? Psychic? No, we're not, right? But yet, we say, no one will ever love me. I'll never get a job that pays as much money. And we stay miserable because we're convinced that what we tell ourselves is true. You don't know. Everything you're afraid of only resides in your head. And this is why I say, one of the hardest things to do, and again, I wish I had more time than 45 minutes. I've written about it in the book. Hardest thing to do, whatever it is that you want to change, I promise you, okay, within reason. I'm never going to be an all-star in the women's basketball team. I'm 5'3", okay? That's never going to happen. But I've achieved unbelievable other things that I never would have thought possible, simply because I didn't buy into what my mind told me, and I said, no, I'm not listening. I'm taking the step anyway. And the hardest thing that you're ever going to have to do is decide to make a change, battle the demons in your head, and take a step anyway. The thing about this is, when we want to make a change, whatever that is, all right, a new job, a different relationship, change the relationship with a family member, start a new company, write a book, travel the world, whatever it is you want to do. The hard thing is, you want to see the whole plan, don't you? Don't you? Yeah. You want to see how it's going to end up, don't you? You want to see, well, before I take that step, I need to be sure I'm going to be successful. It's not the way it works. And it's never going to be the way it works. And that's the hard thing. Any Indiana Jones fans? Okay, apparently Temple of Doom, was that a movie? Okay, then it's in Temple of Doom. There's a scene in Temple of Doom where they're standing on one side of a cavern and they have to get across to the next one. The Indiana Jones fans are all going, oh yeah, it's a good one, yeah. But they're standing on one side and they got to get across to the other side, and they're like, there's Indy, as good as he is, he puts his foot out and magically a bridge appears beneath his feet, or at least the first step. And he steps onto it and he goes to take the other step, and a bridge appears. And unfortunately, as often happens in Hollywood, it is a metaphor for life. You can get wherever you want to go. Is the end result going to look exactly as it does in your head? No. I ended up being a professional speaker. I had intention of being a human resources professional. Clearly, it did not work out the way I had planned. It worked out infinitely better than I could ever have imagined. And that's the point about letting yourself free from that invisible prison that you create. You need to take that first step, and you need to trust that that bridge is going to appear underneath you. Because I promise you, when you take that first step, the next one will appear. And you take that step, and the next one will appear. And no, it's not going to take a week or even a month. Depending on what it is you're trying to achieve, it could be many months. And you know what? It might not look exactly as it did in your mind when you started the journey, but I promise you, you will end up somewhere better than you ever imagined. And if you doubt me, just please think about the video I showed you. Think about the story that I told you. You have no logical, scientific reason why I'm standing here today. Plenty of reasons why I shouldn't be, but there's no logical reason why I should be. That's because there is something there greater than you. You have a destiny in this life. And you know what? The fact that you're sitting in this room, I'm going to bet that you all know what that is. But it just sounds too weird. It just sounds not within your frame of reference, but it's there. It's there because it's waiting to be filled. But you need to take that first step. You need to take responsibility. You're the only one that can, all right? No, the universe isn't going to come knocking on the door. Well, actually it does, but mostly we ignore it, okay? But it will knock louder and louder and louder. Lady stood out there this morning and she had the catalog open and she was reading about me. Okay, I won't call you out or anything. And she said, this word keeps showing up. Everywhere I go, this word keeps showing up. You know what? It's the message. It's the sign. It's the road marker that you're supposed to be going down. And when you don't listen, it will just get louder and louder and louder. And sometimes you'll end up in a horrible situation. It's the universe using what I call the 2x4 method. It failed. You're not supposed to be doing that. Look in a different direction. So you need to take responsibility for this. And I love this. I love this. If you can't read this, it says, I always wonder why the birds stay in the same place when they can fly anywhere on earth. And then I ask myself the same question. It's very powerful. So, you have everything you need to do whatever you want. The only person that has any control over you is you, and you always have a choice. You can stay stuck, or you can do the really hard thing, and you can take one step towards a different future. And I promise you, the next step will appear. And again, I'm not talking about this from reading a book or 6 books. I've actually had to do this again and again and again. And that's why I can say it with such absolute certainty. You choose your thoughts. You can create that negative self-fulfilling prophecy and stay stuck, or you can choose to turn that around. As I said, I really, truly wish that I had 4 hours to spend with you. I don't. I have 45 minutes. So please, if you're interested, we're literally right on the other side of that wall. We'd be happy to talk to you. I have books. My publisher, who's fabulous, this is not available to the general public, and it won't be until April. But my fabulous publisher got me a couple of cases of books for the Best You Expo. So we're selling these for £10 at the Best You Expo. They're $14.99 when it's released in April. And if you come to us and tell us I'm ready, I have over 3 hours of audio and video and downloads here to help you escape your invisible prison, and it's yours for £25. So you can have both of them for £35. But you got to come and tell us I'm ready, and I only have a very limited number of these, but you can see it's a jump drive. So whatever it is that you want to do, I promise you can do it, but you have to release yourself first. So go get them. What can I say? Go get them. Thank you so much.